Hey everyone, a lot of people ask me this question about how neurolinguistic programming really works. In the past, I used to balk at giving away, the classic information about NLP, but the truth is you can find it everywhere on the web these days. So I figured that I just chime in and give you my view of what submodalities actually are. Now, as a person who's been practicing NLP for close to 30 years, I think it's important to put a lot of things in context. What I'm about to show you is probably something that will have to change the way you see things in the first place. Change the way you talk to yourself, change the way you practice on a day-to-day basis, and eventually regain control over what has been lost in terms of your choices. A lot of people don't think that they have choices beyond their circumstances, and unfortunately that's absolutely not true. So I'm going to share with you this because the entire thing about neurolinguistic programming and the idea behind submodalities was just fiction, right? So when you close your eyes, do you actually see pictures or not? Some people don't. So I'm going to run through some of these elements, especially the visual component of the submodalities checklist up here from my institute, the Apex Institute of NLP, where I run my certification programs in NLP. So what I'm going to do is walk through with you how I would change a person's emotional state. The first step is really to do an elicitation. So what exactly is an elicitation? Well, I'll take out this checklist as if I were doing a drill, and I'll close my eyes. I'll start exploring emotional states. Any kind of emotional state would do. Tendency is there are a lot of people who will glean their negative emotional states. And while that's not entirely wrong, I think the challenge is if we default to negative emotional states most of the time, then probably that might be a pattern. In other words, why aren't we rehearsing positive states instead? Anyway, that's just food for thought. That's one of the reasons why you have experience 1 and experience 2 listed up there. It's largely because you want to have a comparative experience and take a look at what makes the difference between these two situations. So there are multiple layers in a mental frame. So you can think about one state as an experience that you would rather not have, but it's a situation that you encounter nonetheless. Take for example, you know you want to go for your workout, but deep down inside you just don't feel like it, right? So these things actually do happen. Comparatively, there must have been other experiences where you did your workout and you did feel like it. So when you take a look at these two experiences, the comparison between the two is going to give you clues in terms of the mental code that made the difference across everything. So take for example, in this case, we have experience 1, which might be a state of motivation to exercise, and experience 2 where there was no motivation to exercise, there was procrastination instead. So if you fix the two scenario related to the area of exercise, you'll find that states do make a difference. And then the moment you can compare the two states, perhaps the one where you actually went out and did your exercise, you were associated, the picture was bright, it was large, it was close to you, it was in color, it was three-dimensional, it was in focus, it was panoramic, and it was a movie that was moving normal speed, 1x speed, and the location of the image was front and center. So if you take a look at those experiences or those submodalities of experience 1, then the next thing is what's the experience 2? If experience 2 is one where you failed to exercise and you procrastinated, right? Then you're going to see that the image might be disassociated, it might be dark, it might be small, it might be further away, it might be black and white, it might be two-dimensional, out of focus, bordered, probably wide, and it's a still image with a location of the image also in the center. So here's the challenge. For most people, they don't understand this process of elicitation is really the first step. They think that that's some newfangled technique, and after elicitation, they don't know what to do with it. And that's what happens in almost all NLP practitioner certifications. I noticed that there are people who try to do the submodality checklist, and then they go like, okay, so what's next? What's so special about it? Well, there are so many things that are special about it, you have to hold on to your horses. So the first thing is, I could take a look at it and then analyze between these two the difference that made the difference. Now, sure enough, there may be some situations where the checklist is exactly as I described to you. One veers more to the left checkboxes, and the other one veers more to the right side checkboxes, right? And you can probably see that there's a difference there. But there are some people where the distinctions are not very clear. So everything is almost the same. So when you take a look at these two experiences of one where you're motivated to exercise and one where not motivated to exercise, maybe both are associated, both are bright, both are large, both are close, both are in color, both are three-dimensional, and so on, with the exception of perhaps one is in focus, the other one is out of focus. Now those are easiest to handle because I almost automatically know the mental code is to change your out of focus negative state or problem state into a in-focused desired state. Now these two experiences are going to be too similar to be able to make meaningful comparisons, and sometimes the visual experience is not good enough. You need to take a look at the auditory experience and maybe even the kinesthetic experience. But because of the nature of this video, I'm not going to go through too much of all that. I just want to give you an idea of how the visual experience already changes you. So take, for example, a controller just like this, right? If I were to imagine that this were a controller for my TV screen, and I could just adjust the lighting, I could adjust the contrast, I could adjust the color, that's exactly what we're doing inside of our minds whenever we change our perspectives. So submodalities is a way to shift the way I perceive the world, almost like changing out and swapping out my lenses for something that's clearer, that's sharper, that's more effective. So if I wanted to, I could take a look at these two experiences and do quite a number of different things with it. Aside from just analysis and elicitation, I could do probably 4 or 5 different things with it just from the get-go, just understanding submodalities. Number 1, I can amplify the positive state. So the state of motivation, I want to feel more of it. I will take whatever is bright, large, and all of these which we call driver submodalities, and we make it even brighter, even larger, and then we calibrate that. Calibration is a skill set of observing the changes that happen within yourself and to get a measure, right? So if let's say your experience 1, a positive experience, is already at a level 10, when you make it brighter, larger, closer to you and so on, to amplify the direction and the state that makes it feel even better than you once originally thought it was, chances are you'll feel like it went even higher than a level 10. Now, that's not uncommon. Feeling good for no good reason is one of the premises of neurolinguistic programming, all right? So when I go out and I tell people, hey, this is one of the ways by which you amplify good states, they go, why would I want to amplify good states? Well, then you're in charge of your own emotional states. Then you don't have to be depressed, you don't have to be anxious, and so on and so forth. But a lot of people need a lot of recalibration and unlearning in order for them to practice this approach, in order to meditate, sit down and really shift your emotional states by first changing your submodalities. Changing your internal thoughts is just one approach, right? For me, I'd rather put everything into it, like changing my breathing, changing my facial expressions. If I wanted to be happy, I'll amplify happy states, put myself into a happy state, and then amplify that. Richard says that in most cases, you amplify negative emotional experiences and you're utilizing your talents wrongly anyway, right? So by changing and amplifying positive states, I have one approach to utilize submodalities so that I'm in better states anywhere in preparation for the day. Now, of course, there are a lot of people who ask me questions like, what happens if my state drops during the day? Then you do the same thing. You amplify more positive states. Some people would say, hey, what if I reduce negative states instead? What if I just dim down the bad feelings? And the answer is, yeah, sure, you could do that. It's only going to go a certain way, but reducing negative states doesn't particularly remove them. And there are some negative states which are useful, and you don't want to have the full brunt of it. For example, skepticism. I've met so many skeptical people in the last few years that they come up to me and say, what if this happens? I don't think this will work because of such and such. Well, you haven't even tried it, so how do you know? So that means that their submodalities have gone ahead of them to make them decide prematurely without really considering everything. So sometimes this kind of skepticism is very helpful in mitigating risk and reducing problems in the future, but if it's too amplified, you're going to find that everything is a problem, everything is a fault, everything is a risk, and as a result, you're going to have to reduce that. So take a negative state, reduce the negativity of that state, and what you will find is that rather than operating at a level 10 of skepticism, you can operate at a level 3 of skepticism so that it doesn't break your ecology, which is the balance of your entire model of the world, and yet it doesn't cause you to get into trouble and completely dismiss new possibilities all at one time. So that's the second thing that you can do. So first one was you can amplify positive states. The second one is you can minimize negative states. Now, it gets a little bit funky from here. When I take a look at submodalities, while it is about state and shifting the emotions that you have inside of you, that makes you more resourceful. So the sense of resourcefulness is contrasted against physical resources like money, like a table, like a good microphone, and so on. Whatever it is that you have is not as important physically as it is the emotional states that you have that you can use to get the physical things. Take for example, money. If you were creative enough, you'll probably be able to find some way to make the money, right? So it's about putting yourself into a creative and positive state in order for you to create the change in your life circumstances. Sure, you need skill sets, but again, skill sets are the external resource. What you need to do is to put yourself into such a curious state that you can actually draw in this feeling of being able to learn fast, and as a result, you have the skills and capabilities anyway. Now we have to go beyond just diminishing and amplifying emotional states, because that's what we could naturally do if not intentionally. Once again, submodalities is not new. It's just a way of framing your way of thinking so that you can intentionally change your emotional states. So one of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of people tend to feel bad for no good reason, right? But then they don't know how to deliberately create new habit structures. So neurolinguistic programming created, Richard Bandler created this powerful structure known as the swish pattern. And what it is taking mental cues in order that you see within the environment, use them as mental cues to trigger off behaviors. So just as an example, let's just say I wanted to feel very energized. So how do I feel energized when I'm really sleepy or tired? Well, I come into an environment where I can turn on the lights and then use that physically to make myself feel awake. Sure, I can do that, especially if it's like 3 a.m. in the morning or something like that. However, it is also possible for you to change your mental frame by making the mental state brighter, and then to create a habit so that wherever you go, wherever you notice this reminder, it actually triggers off this feeling of alertness and energy in your body anyway. You kind of deceive your brain. Well, deception is not really the best word to use, but I think you get what I mean. If I can go inside my head and tell myself that I am awake, chances are I will be awake. And it's going to carry through in terms of my behaviors, my posture, my facial expressions, my muscular tension, and so on. There must have been times where, however, you want to build a long-term habit rather than just a temporary state, right? Because temporary states don't help, especially if you feel really tired in the middle of the day and you just don't know what to do with it. So habits can be created utilizing the switch pattern. So what you do is you take a trigger, which is something that's within your vicinity. It could be an object, it could be an alarm, something that you hear, it could be something that you see. It could be an environment. Like in my environment, I want to keep my environment pristine because whenever I sit here, it is a place for my recovery, it's a place for my work, and I want to be able to do my best work possible. So all I do is I create positive energy inside here, and I imagine embellishing my walls, my screen, my microphone, my camera with great, powerful feelings. Enthusiasm, excitement, curiosity, learning, eloquence, all of these things will go into these objects so that every time I look at them, I'm going to feel so good that I can do videos like this. So what do? In my mind, I take a look at this camera. I use this camera as a mental trigger. The mental trigger goes out because I'm utilizing something known as distance. Close to you or far away is a driver for many things such as brightness, color, even focus, because the things that go further away usually don't get sharper, right? They get a little bit hazier. So as a logical driver, I'll take the image of my camera over here, use that as a trigger, send it out into the distance like that, And in the distance, the image of myself feeling focused and alert comes back in. So I have that go inside of my body, and then I'm looking out through my own eyes, feeling hyper focused, and I shift my physiology, I shift my breathing, I shift my facial expressions, so that the physiology is now in tandem with my mental state. And then I stay there for a while, and this is one cycle. I'll do 7 cycles, and in between each cycle, I'll break the pattern so that I'll be able to utilize my mind to test. So after every 7, I'll test myself. Usually what happens is that there's a tapering down of the uniqueness of that state. So initially when I first start out, it feels very impactful, it feels very powerful, but over the course of the 7, it tends to become less and less intense, because to a certain extent my brain is getting used to it, and I'm kind of like taking it for granted right now. So as I close my eyes and I think of that trigger, all of a sudden I'm going to feel the experience of that focus coming back to me the way I envisaged it. So this, in a sense, is a way to prepare yourself ahead of time when you know that you're going to be tired or you're going to be less energized, and come into a space that can actually uplift you and energize you, right? So this is very, very powerful, and it's so important for every single person to use, but it's kind of like lost in the literature. A lot of people don't know how to use this, and even in my own explanations of this, you're not necessarily going to get a sudden epiphany and say that, oh, I suddenly know how to use the swish pattern. No, it takes practice, it takes the right kind of belief system. If you're skeptical, you're unlikely to be able to engender the practice of the swish pattern. And in the first place, if you don't understand the principles behind the mechanics, you probably wouldn't be able to use it anyway. But if you just test it out, I mean, take some object that you have. It could be a shaver, it could be a pen that you frequently write with, it could be your favorite t-shirt, for example. And all you need to do is take that image inside your mind, imagine sending it out into the distance, and then using that as a link, send in the desired image, so that every time you see this object or this thing, is going to bring back an emotional state. Embody that state, amplify that state inside your mind, and then notice how you take action from that state. And you'll find that there's something completely different inside of your repertoire of tools to be able to do. Now again, I'm not suggesting that everybody will understand this approach. It's just if I were to dumb it down, it will be known as an if-then programming process, right? If I see this object, then I will feel this way. If I hear my alarm clock, then I will wake up. If I smell my coffee, then I'll be in a good mood, and so on and so forth. We have many of these, right? But we do it so unconsciously, we didn't realize we could prepare the habit ahead of time. And that's the beauty of it. So that's the third technique, known as the swish pattern. There are many others. One of it would be to change and uplift your belief patterns. So one of the interesting approaches to creating a comparative experience between experience 1 and 2 is this. Hasn't there been a time where you found that you believe in something so much that you're willing to bet your life on it? So what happens is that I very often take a look at situations where I believe very strongly about something. Like, it's an absolute belief. The sun's gonna rise today. If I go to the tap and turn it on, in Singapore at least, I'm gonna get water. So every time I think about absolute beliefs, I have a certain set of submodalities that are there. And more importantly, I know that there are times where I need to believe it. Like, for example, I need to believe that no matter what happens, my skill set is superior to in NLP, is superior because of my years of experience, and that I can do anything with it. So when I take a look at that image, I can do anything with NLP, it may not be as absolute, right? Compared with, let's say, the sun will rise tomorrow, the submodalities are slightly different. So you could say that this is one of a skeptical or slightly more doubtful experience that I want to believe. I mean, I want to believe that I can do anything with NLP, right? So that's one thing. And then I've got an image of an absolute belief that might be bigger and brighter, but this one might be further away and dimmer. So what I'll do is I'll take the submodalities here and transplant them over to the doubtful belief, so that it is brighter, so that it is closer, and then I will notice that the level of belief that I have, the intensity level of this particular experience, actually goes up. And by doing the mapping process, now I can use the swish pattern to consistently and always believe that I can do anything with NLP. So now I take a trigger like a pen or a earbuds or whatever, take that image, send it out, and whenever I see that, it'll send in the belief that anything is possible with neurolinguistic programming. So sometimes beliefs need to be rehearsed too. I've spoke about this in my other videos on self-talk, and this particular approach is so powerful that I believe that is a game changer for everybody who consistently practices it. Now, given that I don't practice it every single day, I'm pretty sure that you don't practice it. Even if you're a licensed NLP practitioner, right? I don't think you practice this even every month. And all I can say is that if you sustain a new set of beliefs that are absolute for you, you're going to start to, it's going to be a superpower for you. You're going to be able to believe and lean into belief and activate the internal placebo effect in a very, very powerful way. And unfortunately, a lot of people just don't know how to use it. So, granted, I've gone through this process, I've shared this process. It doesn't necessarily mean that you'll apply it correctly, and I'm very mindful of that. Take what you can from this. It's kind of like a free masterclass in submodality transformation, and all you're doing is taking your mind, utilizing the codes that make for a better way of viewing the world and having more choice. So as you amplify your choice, all of a sudden things are better. Now, over the course of the years, and of course, I'm just going to pause here because otherwise this video will take way too long, but I do hope that it's given you some idea in terms of the power of the internal thought patterns and the cognitions that you can have. Over the course of the years, I've been battling things like bad temper, right? I've been battling things like negative self-talk. I've been battling things like the sense of not being good enough. And all the time I have that inside my head, I'm just constantly churning out bad, lousy vibes. And if I could have overcome that early in my life, I would have been able to do so many more things. I would be more social, I'll be on stage more regularly. I would have been able to conquer business far more powerfully rather than just hit my head against the wall sometimes. And through that sense of internal evolution, it creates for me this space where I can transform, I can create a transformation within myself to create breakthroughs. Less skepticism, a higher level of self-awareness, self-assurance, in order for me to strongly believe that whatever is a challenge that's put in front of me is going to be easily dealt with. Not to be overconfident, you know what I'm saying? It's more like knowing that deep inside of me, I already have the capabilities and the skills to be able to accomplish whatever it is that I want. So there you have it. I mean, I've talked through the submodality processes inside this walkthrough. 4 strategies that you can take. There are definitely more. I've utilized this to reduce people's compulsions to want to do the wrong things. I've used this to help people to generate new behaviors and new states that activate on demand. I've utilized this for so many other therapeutic methods that a lot of people don't realize can be utilized as personal therapy and self-help. Now, yes, I know there's a movement going on out there that says that self-help doesn't work, so what have you achieved? Well, it's better than nothing, right? You got to start somewhere. And if you don't get a coach, if you don't develop your own leadership, and you don't start going deep inside to find the power that you have within you and test it in the world outside of you, then you wouldn't really feel like it is a superpower in the first place. So I'd like to encourage you to start off very simply. Firstly, can you learn to amplify good states just using these visual submodalities that I've shared with you? Just that alone. Sure, there'll be exceptions to the rule. Some of you may not have a visual clarity or visual sense, and you might be limited based on these submodalities. It's fine, right? Everyone is unique, and there's going to be some of you that I understand will be skeptical, and you'll probably have clicked out of the video by now. But at the end of the day, those of you who are still on this video, you probably have a sense that there's something special about this. There's a certain way by which you view the world that is going to be quite different, right? So test it out, amplify good feelings. Make sure that you experience it in your body. Imagine seeing that experience spreading out inside your body. Notice on a scale of 1 to 10, how intense that has shifted, how intensely that has shifted. Next, I'd like you to think about how you can create new habits, just as if-then programming, by selecting an object randomly, send it out into the distance, send in an image or a video of yourself really taking the steps to experience that state, and then feel how that state is going to help you to take the correct actions. Just those two things, and it's going to profoundly transform your life. Now, of course, you may not be able to practice it properly. It might be a limitation of my experience. It might be a limitation of technology. We can't get the back and forth, so you're going to potentially misinterpret it. Hang on there, right? Stay sharp. Go study a little bit more. Go buy some of Richard Bandler's books. Come and attend an NLP practitioner certification program for what it's worth, so that you can actually take things to that next higher level of evolution that can help you to transcend beyond pain and suffering. So if you found that this was helpful and walking through some of these mechanics was useful for you, then do click the like and subscribe so that you can be notified for further strategies that I can share online. And if you really want to get involved in Neurolinguistic programming training, I will be running periodic certification trainings here and there. So if you are interested in them, then do let me know and drop me a note. I'll be very happy to get in touch with you and see whether it's suitable for you. So go ahead, click the like, subscribe, share this with your friends who might be interested in Neurolinguistic programming but didn't have a 29-year veteran to share it with you. So go ahead, share this with your friends, and I will see you in my next video.